Okay, we're starting, folks. If you could all have a seat, please. How is everyone today? I would like to welcome you to the Climate Modification Technology Workshop. And today we have leading experts from around the world. Myself, I came from Los Angeles, California. I'm noted in the industry for speaking about this issue and bringing forth two well-known documentaries that address the issue of geoengineering in relation to climate modification. Those are both What and Why in the World Are They Spraying? But I'd like to introduce, before I go further, or have our panelists introduce themselves. And if we could just, during your introduction, talk about your background, what university you're from, if applicable, and what your expertise is in relation to this issue. And then we'll move forward with presentations. Start? Let's start. Not presentations, but I'd like to do introductions, if we could.
I'm not sure if that one is working. No, it's working. Türkçe konuşuyorum tabii, neden İngilizce başladım bilmiyorum ama ismim Durukan Dudu. Anadolu Meralarından, Anadolu Meraları eş kurucusuyum. Galatasaray Üniversitesi Uluslararası İlişkiler bir bölümünü bitirdikten sonra İsveç'te bir yüksek lisans kırsal kalkınma konusunda ve ardından Türkiye'de onarıcı tarım, yani iklim değişikliğine mücadele olarak onarıcı tarım konusunda çalışan bir kurum oluşturduk. Sunumda da bundan bahsedeceğim. Teşekkür ederim.
Thank you.
Doktor Necmi Dayday. Ben aslında nükleer enerji uzmanıyım. Nükleer enerji uzmanı olarak nükleerin iklime ne kadar pozitif katkı yapacağını anlatmak için buradayım. Teşekkür ederim.
Hi, my name is Patrick Brody. I'm an Irish-born San Francisco. I live in San Francisco now. I have a physics background. I was a journalist and I'm a photographer. And I've been researching geoengineering for several years. I presented a paper to the Paris Climate Conference on the human health impacts of geoengineering, proposed geoengineering solutions, and also testified at the EPA this past August. More will follow.
My name is Michael Fleming. I'm an author of the book Weather and Active Men, and also have short books available from Amazon.com. And I have had a little bit of legal action against geoengineering from the States. I live in Huntsville, Alabama. And this book proves that all clouds are man-made. It's cloud physics for anybody that wants to research it, you know. And I'm considering, you know, like just talking about the pollution factor of geoengineering the most. It's basically chemical weapons use against American citizens, and we don't want that virus to spread to the globe.
Hello, my name is Edwin Aldrian. I'm a practitioner of the weather modification in my country, from Indonesia. So it's been a long time that we use this for many purposes. I would like to present some of the application for weather modification in my country. Thank you very much.
All right, and we thank you all for traveling, some of us very far, to come in today. Today during the workshop, a lot of what you hear is going to be something new. And that's the issue of geoengineering and other climate modification. Some of it might even sound, a bit conspiratorial. But today we're going to look at the winners, the losers, and many of the human health and ecological implications of geoengineering and other related programs today. While in denial, there's evidence which is very abundant that geoengineering programs have been started. One of those is stratospheric aerosol geoengineering. And that's the idea of taking airplanes or other sources and creating an artificial cloud cover to block the sun and mitigate this issue of global warming. What we have found, a number of applications in climate manipulation can be achieved. And they're a very effective way to consolidate both monetary and political power into the hands of a few at the expense of many things on our planet that we value, such as human health, ecosystems, many other things. With geoengineering come many risks, and that contains ozone depletion, aluminum toxicity, this issue of abiotic stress, which I hope we hear more from today within our soils, and that relates to depletion of our food supply and many other challenges that we're faced. It's being sold to the public as a last-ditch issue in terms of mitigate global warming. And again, the idea is by putting toxins such as aluminum oxide and other metals into our sky, which are highly reflective, the idea is that it will reflect sunlight back into space and thus cool the planet. In theory, that may sound very good, but aluminum is very toxic, not only to human health, but ecosystems around the world. And while, again, it is being sold or discussed in our climate meetings, we have found in rain tests and other samples, even peer-reviewed papers, that aluminum levels have risen several thousand percentage points in just the past 8 to 10 years. And aluminum-related illnesses and other forms of abiotic stress to our ecosystems and other agriculture needs have increased as well. So we're very concerned about this issue. But again, right now we have our talks in Paris, and these talks are in discussion about forming a global climate agreement in regards to climate change. Geoengineering programs are designed to change the temperature of our planet, and as you'll see in my video, they definitely are designed also to manipulate our weather. And geoengineers are even talking about harnessing the control of our weather, which we believe, or many of us believe, has already happened. With this, our concerns are, and studies that indicate that we do have climate change, and I don't think that would be an argument against many of us in the room today, the models that source CO2 as being the cause of climate change, and I realize I'm going to contradict many opinions here. The models do not contain geoengineering programs, whether it's weather engineering or ongoing stratospheric aerosol geoengineering programs. Because those models don't include what we believe is the main factor, or one of the main factors in climate change, we believe that they're fraudulent. So this is an area to look at, because we're looking at a vast amount of transformation, both political and monetary, due to these climate talks. And because of that, we have some winners, we have some losers. Certain countries stand to lose, other countries stand to benefit from this issue. However, what we do have, we have a global population, many of whom will have restrictions, they will have taxation. And in countries where there's this issue of democracy or constitutional republics, I think we yield high risk of losing those freedoms in a country. So those are issues that we're looking at right now, and I hope that we can have further discussion. What I would like to do is show a film just to give you a basic of the issue and some of the related technology, such as Haarp, the High Active Auroral Research Project, but it's generally based on stratospheric aerosol geoengineering and the issue of weather control. So thank you very much for allowing me to introduce our great speakers today, and I hope we leave today with vast knowledge and some action in terms of moving forward in our respective professions. Thank you. And I'll be doing about a 3-minute question and answer after we play this video. Thank you.
name is Scott Stevens. I was a television weatherman for 20 years. These chemtrails are absolutely required to impact whatever weather event they were designing. And the trails were an absolute necessary ingredient for them to achieve their weather modification goals.
Chemtrails are a key element in the whole thing because they're obviously a way of putting a highly reflective material into the atmosphere.
With cloud seeding, the cooling will be achieved by making clouds reflect a bit more sunlight back to space than they would otherwise, and less sunlight reaching the surface would tend to cool the planet.
So let's say we were doing geoengineering because we wanted to make the weather a little bit better.
The more we see these trails in the sky, the less rain we get. Virtually all scientific data, even from the proponents of geoengineering, state clearly saturating the atmosphere with particulates will create drought.
Much has been made of this issue of damage from precipitation.
If the issue is understanding the climatic response, which was I think most of this was going, that's exactly whether precipitation is higher or lower.
There will be monsoon failures during that period. There will be huge hurricanes.
It's likely to cause some damage in some places.
The global studies indicate there will be some impact on precipitation patterns, and obviously there's a lot more opportunity to work in that area. Just seeding can be pretty effective for the clouds we explored, but the interactions between seeding and precipitation in the form of drizzle are really complex.
So we're finding the aerosols, the metal particulates, the weather engineering, whether it's scalar, ionic, or orgone, or the chi of the atmosphere, all of those can be used and leveraged to create weather events that are several standard deviations or outside what would be typically normal. Before jumping on the chemtrail bandwagon was I needed a motive. Without a motive, you can't say what they're doing and why they're doing it. You have to have a motive.
Weather derivatives are products that commercial hedgers would use, such as an insurance company or an energy company, to hedge risk that's associated with weather. Precipitation or a hurricane or general heating days is what they're basically called. Certain temperatures or higher temperatures are going to associate with more energy. So they're going to want to hedge that risk. If you can structure a product where you say, okay, I'm going to buy insurance against it raining more than 10 inches in this area. If my risk is, say, let's say $1 million, but I'm insured for $10 million, then I can make it rain and collect the premium on the $10 million. Well, of course.
So the agenda was drought. The agenda was to kill the storm, at least in that one particular spot.
If you're reducing the food security of people through deploying these kinds of approaches, then
Potentially 2 billion people could have their food disrupted by such interventions.
It affects farmers by their ability to plan what they're going to be growing.
You see a tremendous and significant loss of property and crop production. Many times this will cause farms to go out of business, and when farmers go out of business they usually have to sell, and then if there's somebody waiting in the wings to buy their land and then turn that land over to the production of genetically modified crops, you can see where there would be kind of a strategic advantage there.
The fact that it's cheap isn't necessarily a good thing at all, so I'll come to it in a second. The fact that it's cheap is part of the whole hard problem of governance. The fact that it's cheap means any small state or even conceiving individuals could do this, and that is a very dangerous thing.
There's only probably under $10 million per year, and maybe far less than that, being spent on geoengineering research. It's a mix of a handful of government grants and some private money, including support from Bill Gates.
There is a line of research on what's called geoengineering. The climate getting worse means that many years their crops won't grow. There'll be too much rain, not enough rain. Things will change in ways that their fragile environment simply can't support.
If Bill Gates invests in geoengineering, and he profits from the destruction through his investment in Monsanto. Monsanto is coming in and they're saying, we have a solution for your problems. Basically, if you control the weather and the seed source, you essentially control all food production.
You can kill a storm in place. That's easy to do with Haarp. You just change the polarization, you change the ionization of the atmosphere, and the storm will fall apart.
Haarp is actually an acronym for High Altitude Active Aurora Research Program, and it in the patents for the Haarp system it describes what is detailed as ionospheric heating. Create situations where crops are either so severely flooded that they're destroyed.
So it's very easy to add those particulates of aluminum, barium, and whatever else they want to put in there. And as you add heat to that, those particulates then radiate the heat into the atmosphere and it warms. Let's just say the storms can develop more violently, more quickly, in places that are not necessarily as where you would expect them to be.
We have altered weather patterns that are also stated as consequences of geoengineering. Since these global weather modification programs appear to have been ramped up so radically in the last decade, our weather here has changed unimaginably.
And we've got technologies available to us now that can do, continent-sized projects. Is all of the persistent trails behind it. So that tells me, Michael, that they are engineering this storm to a great degree. All of the stuff, this chemtrail debris or chemtrail clouds that have been laid down over Utah and over southern Colorado earlier in the day.
What we see in the sky matches virtually all geoengineering patterns. The fact that hundreds of lab tests taken from all over the globe match exactly the ingredients stated in geoengineering patents as primary elements.
But not very much. And there's certainly uncertainty about how bad those effects will be, but they will be extremely bad.
One of the most hardy rush forms known, the manzanita, it looks like it's been hit with insecticide. And we're seeing this throughout the ecosystem. And there's virtually no growth, and we see whole plants, whole mature plants, 50, 60, 70-year-old, almost trees die out for no reason whatsoever that we can find other than the contaminated soils. So if it's in the rain, it's in the soil. And now we see incredibly hardy organisms dying for no other cause that we can find other than the contamination in our rain from these aerosol operations.
And so you get ecosystem collapses.
And if you control the weather, you're going to control the planet. It's that simple.
Since the release, okay. Thank you. We're going to be doing presentations and then about 3 minutes after the presentation for questions and answers. And so we'll be hoping to keep that time. Does anybody have a time on me before questions? Because I want to make sure that, of course, I adhere to the time limitations if I'm asking others to adhere to them. Let's go in for questions. Before I do that, let's do a raise of hands. How many people were familiar with this issue? And then we'll get your question. So it's largely new to people. What I'd like to do is talk to some of you and provide you with my film, which is has won over 14 awards, been seen around the world. So I'd like to share that to you as a gift today. I've bought some extra films. And you had a question, sir?
Yes, please. This is rather heavy and scary. But the question is, can anybody do this? What does the EPA do about this? I mean, they have lots of things about the FDA, whatever, all sorts of these administrations. They're just letting anybody do whatever they want.
Exactly. That's a great question. Well, geoengineer David Keith, who's working with Bill Gates, he said any small-time billionaire could essentially do this. Geoengineering is very cost-effective. The returns are very great, so it can be done at a very small scale.
Putting it up on the air.
Putting it in, yes, stratospheric aerosol geoengineering. It's very cost-effective, and the returns are great. So that's an area that we looked at. In terms of the EPA, what's interesting, about 12 years ago, the EPA used to test for certain particles. They're only testing for combustibles. So they're not finding any evidence of geoengineering programs. However, they're not looking for it. We don't find what you're not testing for. So all agencies, at least in the US and many abroad, are not testing for the aluminum particles. We do have various tests, various air quality tests. The state of California has done certain air quality tests. What they have found was no evidence of geoengineering programs. However, these are nanoparticles. They range from 1/10 of a nanoparticle. So if I have a filter, let's say it's a chain link fence, and I'm trying to catch, let's say marbles. If you dump 200 marbles on it, you may catch one, you may catch two. You won't find any evidence, and that's what we're seeing. So HEPA filters can catch some of it, so we're doing a lot of various tests. I'm moving forward with my team in my next film, which I'm in production, for. And we are taking an airplane up into the trails. We have a team, Dr. J. Marvin Herndon, who is a world-renowned scientist. He recently did a peer-reviewed paper sourcing geoengineering as being ongoing right now. It's been very effective. Because of that, we're expecting to get court-admissible conclusive evidence. And that has a lot of implications on the issue of climate change legislation, climate change mandates. It's essential. And again, I can't stress enough, geoengineering programs, they do change our climate. They do change our weather patterns. So that's an area that we have to look at. We were in Paris, France, and I spoke with some of the world's more renowned climate scientists, and many of them agreed with us. If geoengineering programs were ongoing and they were left out of the models, what does that mean to the issue of climate change? And it means that the models are flawed, and it means they're inaccurate. And what we have to do, what we definitely have to do is stop geoengineering. And then we can come back and determine whether the planet's warming or cooling. But right now, it's literally impossible due to the fact that these programs are ongoing. You had another question,
Yes,
sir?
no, that wasn't an answer to my question, basically. My question was, is there no way, no permission required to do all these things, going up in the air and putting these particles up there? I mean, administratively was my question.
Yeah.
All that we understand very well, but administratively, what bothers me?
Right now, there's been attempts at regulation for small-scale programs. Currently, these programs, we believe, are illegal, although that's somewhat debatable. There are damages. There are winners and losers, according to the world's top geoengineers. People who benefit from these programs, people who don't benefit. And the way that it's covered, and hopefully it won't be, hopefully we can end these programs, and the way that it's really looked at on a geopolitical basis is really critical. Should we be geoengineering at all? Should we be putting chemicals, pollution, into our atmosphere at all? And should we be moving forward with a global transformation based on models that don't include geoengineering and have not researched the issue of geoengineering? And I would like to add, the answer to that question is no. Princess, you had a question?
Yes, Professor, I just wanted to ask about the license. Do you get license to be geoengineered? Do you have the specifications to go to universities to learn them? How does it work? I mean, how's the whole thing works and gets together?
Yes. Well, there appears to be a global, because this is seen in most regions. A couple of regions in Africa, we don't have any visual sites of what we believe, the trails in our sky, which we believe certainly many of them are geoengineering programs. Rain tests indicate that geoengineering programs have been initiated around the planet, but where does this occur? So if you geoengineer, let's say in the United States, that drift can have implications several thousand miles away. So you would get fallout, let's say in Africa, from geoengineering. But right now it's secret, at least stratosphere.
So it is governmental, let's say.
Well, governments have...
You just said about controlling the weather is power. And whoever controls the weather
if you
controls the world. So we're talking about power.
If you control the weather, you can control every political system and every food supply. It's a tremendous means to implicate a tremendous amount of power. And we're looking at COP21 right now in Paris. The talks are going on, and I believe that they're going to sign and come up with a global agreement. With that global agreement, we have a huge transfer of power, both monetary and political. We have taxation without representation, and we have mandates that are expected to be implemented towards people around the globe. So we look at the issue of geoengineering and how does it relate to this. Geoengineering, again, has tremendous impacts on our climate. It has tremendous impacts on the way that we deal with this issue of climate change. And all of our studies indicate that it has been ongoing for well over 40 years. I want to answer your question as well that you specifically asked in terms of legalization or licensing. We do have various forms of geoengineering. Some of those forms are weather manipulation. So it could be weather modification. Inc., for example, is in the United States. And what they can do, except for in California, which we can get into, but they have the ability to seed clouds with licenses, and they use silver iodide, which has been used for several decades. And that can initiate rain, and the idea is by putting silver iodide or other particles, they act as what's called cloud condensation nuclei. So the water molecules will attract onto the silver, and then what will happen, it will rain, because they collect, they get heavy, and they rain. These are regional programs, geoengineering, stratospheric aerosol geoengineering programs. We're finding the fallout around the world. These programs are unregulated at the time, they're beyond testing, and essentially illegal right now. So there are many fronts, there are many people moving forward to stop the very legislation. Our concerns are this type of global climate agreement. What are the implications in terms of geoengineering for countries that may not benefit, that could have losses? For example, you can create droughts in certain areas with geoengineering programs. These are not my words. These are the words of some of the top geoengineers. It will create droughts in certain areas, floods in other areas.
Weather weapons.
Without question, weather weapons, and they have been around for very long. Defense Secretary Gates from the United States spoke about this, about 17 years ago, about these new technologies. The challenge that we face, those of us who are promoting this issue, and somebody please keep a time on me because I don't want to go over. Okay, Patrick's saying I'm over. Can we talk afterwards?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much for introducing. We have some incredible speakers today, and we'll be moving on to Patrick Brody, who's I consider a colleague and one of the foremost experts here in the United States, or is it from Ireland, or is it from the UK? He's a global man. Thank you very much. How long was your presentation?
Okay, so, so my name is Patrick Brody. I'm a geoengineering researcher out of San Francisco. Physics and chemistry background. My titles are weird here, but I presented this paper to the Paris Climate Conference in July this year. My concern is on the human health impacts. Officially, all of this is on my website, stopsprayingonsSF.com. I'll hand out copies of the paper afterwards. But what is it? You hear a lot of talk about climate engineering. It's discussed as a proposal. It's a last resort. We're not doing it right now, but the general idea is to put reflective particles into the sky to reflect sunlight back into space to reduce global warming. And in public, the only discussion is about sulfates. There's Bill Gates talking about it, putting sulfur dioxide up into the sky. This is a patent from 1991, filed by Hughes Aircraft, and it's now owned by defense contractor Raytheon, which describes this very process where Wells-backed materials, which are metal oxide, sprayed into the sky to reflect sunlight to reduce global warming. It doesn't actually work because when you add a cloud layer, that is an insulator. Water, cloudy nights are warmer. It's a very potent greenhouse gas. So it's a bad idea. And the same year that was filed, the Club of Rome, which is not like a quiet drinking club, wrote that this is after the fall of the Soviet Union. In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we suggested that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. And this was in a quest for global governance, which the Club of Rome and Trilateral Commission and other groups are That's their, eventual goal. But the global warming thing has been a little problematic. The pause that happened in the late 90s has been admitted by the head of the IPCC, Pachari. This is 2 years old, so it's nearly 20 years now. With global warming not playing ball, another way of implementing these global agreements is extreme weather, which you can actually now engineer quite easily. As I say, in public, the only discussions are about sulfates, but David Keith is one of the main proponents. In his paper in 2010, he said sulfates aren't that effective for solar radiation management, and instead you need to use nanoparticulate aluminum, barium, and other metals. That's what we're finding in our rainwater and all other things. And this is another paper from Pope, and they say pretty much the same thing. By the way, all of my entire presentation will be on the website, so you can see that later. Another character who has been promoting the solar radiation management program is Ken Caldera out of Stanford. This is him a couple of years ago in Berkeley, discussing, well, hear for yourself. Audio? Oh, have we lost audio?
And so you actually use this metaphor of talking about
I think
chemotherapy.
Yeah, because chemotherapy, what is chemotherapy? Chemotherapy is taking a poison. And if you say, oh, let's research taking poison, let's be poison researchers, people say, oh, look at this terrible person, he's researching eating poison. He wants people to eat poison, isn't he awful? But, if you have cancer, you might decide that eating the poison is the right thing to do because it's going to kill all the cancer cells more than the good cells. And I don't think geoengineering much the same way, that it's something you don't want to do.
After this lecture, I asked him afterwards about a very controversial statement he said before you, and his answer is quite telling. Listen to this.
Back when you're Lawrence Livermore, you're on record as proposing putting pathogens into clouds to raid over enemy territory. Then I have audio.
Show me it. Show me it.
I can play it to you. I got my iPhone.
Okay. I used to work at Lawrence Livermore National Lab, and I once participated in a meeting where we all sat around the room and thought about how could we manipulate geophysical systems to use it as a weapon. The meeting was about weaponizing geophysical interventions. That means, could you somehow interfere in Earth's functioning in a way that you could use it as a military weapon? Could you change climate? What could you do in terms of manipulating the sort of Earth's physical systems as a weapon? Well, some of the ideas were okay, maybe we could blow up hydrogen bombs, underwater, offshore, and make a tidal wave that would go over a city. And the result was, well, isn't it easier just to drop the hydrogen bombs on the city? Now you could imagine, though, say putting pathogens in a cloud, let the cloud, go over somewhere and then would rain down on your enemy and create, do chemical or term warfare in this kind of way. Yeah, this is true.
This guy is proposing putting hamburger helper mystery meat stuff into our sky, and he worked at a weapons lab where they were talking about doing chemical and germ warfare. Can we trust these people? This is a children's book from NASA. Well, it's funded by NASA and the State Department, and they're saying, oh yeah, these lines in the sky are perfectly normal, don't worry about them. But in the teacher's note down here, it says, contrails are clouds formed when water vapor condenses and freezes around small particles, aerosols, that exist in aircraft exhaust. Hydrocarbons produce water and carbon dioxide, neither of which are particulates or aerosols. This is sketchy at best. Anyway, so what is actually going on in our skies? I have some pictures for you. This is from San Jose. a few months ago, and you have this trail here with this weird stuff like coming off the side. This is out my bedroom window in San Francisco. You know, a normal morning with trails everywhere. This is another morning. The skies are ruined. They spray at night. If this is solar radiation management, I mean, is this lunar radiation management? So it's nasty. This is Yosemite National Park. They just, I mean, it's nothing sacred. It's horrific. Another shot from above. NASA has a fantastic website. It's called EarthView. You can look all over the globe and see satellite imagery everywhere. This is San Francisco, getting nailed. Here's another one, grids everywhere. Here is San Francisco. It's like little tiny little things. You can't really see it very well here, but there is like 2,000-mile-long parallel trails stretching halfway across the Pacific. And NOAA say, oh no, that's a wingtip vortex. No. Here is a massive thing from a few weeks ago. Like, you can see, like this is California. The size of this activity here, what's going on? There's more down here. This is Florida on the December 1st, a few days ago. Totally nailed. This is Morocco. Last week, Red Sea. Turkey. Everywhere gets nailed. This is the English Channel. This is the Mediterranean. France covered. Russia, they spray everywhere. Taiwan, Bay of Biscay again, completely covered. This is all artificial. Georgia, not very natural looking. And this one is absolutely nuts. This is the Netherlands, and you can't even see the place. It's this checkerboard grid all over it. It's absolutely horrific. And this is in Santa Barbara last year, and this is becoming a very common sight. We did not see this when we were children. Physics hasn't changed, so what is different? Water vapor is a clear gas. You cannot see it. Steam is the liquid, but water vapor won't condense to itself. It needs a condensation nucleus. What is it condensing to? What are these condensation nuclei? Another thing we're starting to see quite this has only happened in the last few years, is this thing. The disinfo people call it an incredibly rare sundog. That was their first line. And then they call it a sundog or a halo, or it's colloquially known as a cambo, because I do time lapses in my at my window in San Francisco, and this is a particularly nasty day. And you'll see this halo forming around here. Water vapor, liquid and ice water has the same refractive index, 1.33 or so, and it makes a rainbow which has a 42-degree angular radius. So to make something, this is a 21-degree halo, and to do that you need something with double the refractive index, and barium sulfate is one thing that has this. So there was, in spring, there were 21 of these incredibly rare sundogs in my time lapses, and you'll see them here. And like, what is going on with this? Look at old photographs. You never saw these things. What has changed? Fortunately for me, towards the end of this period, there was a brief period of rain. And anytime it rains in California, which is actually kind of rare, because by flooding the sky with particulates, it makes it a lot harder. Makes it harder to rain. Rain forms from a particle. When enough moisture attracts to it, it gets large enough and it falls out of suspension and comes down as rain, hail, or other precipitation. When you flood the sky with all these particles, it takes a lot more moisture for those particles to get up the size it would need to rain. It acts like a big sponge, so it stops raining, and that's why I believe California is suffering a historic drought right now. So you get the general idea of this. So when I got my rain analyzed, barium came back at 160 micrograms per liter. How on earth did that happen? I live on the west coast of the United States. We have prevailing winds off the Pacific Ocean. We have 7,000 miles of clear ocean. So what on earth is this stuff doing in our, in our skies? I mean, clearly you can see from the time lapses, they were spraying the crap out of San Francisco, and it came down as and it shows up in the rainwater. A previous test I did the year before, aluminum came up at 190 micrograms per liter, and barium at 15. This is the material safety data sheet for barium carbonate, and it's causes vomiting, diarrhea, convulsive tremors, muscular paralysis, pulmonary arrest, sudden cardiac failure. It's really, really nasty. It's highly, highly toxic. It's, it affects every system in your body. And this is the one for nanoparticulate aluminum, and it causes tumors, neoplasms, Alzheimer's. Both these metals are, it's well established how toxic they are. That's beyond question. This was also alarming. In 2011, respiratory failure overtook stroke to be the third leading cause of death in the United States. And this is at a time when smoking was decreasing, factories had moved to China, there was better emissions on cars, so what changed? Apart from the obvious. This is some of the massive data on the toxicity of aluminum. Now people in their 20s are getting Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's in the early 90s did not make the top 10 causes of death in the United States. Now it's number 6 overall. And these are ways you can reach me. So we're long past the point of pretending this doesn't exist. It is not just water vapor or trails. And it's a covert program. It is happening everywhere. As anyone can look, if they go on the NASA website, it is just horrific. And the way we're going to win this is just people talking to their neighbors and just pointing out what's in the sky. Anyone can do their own rainwater analysis. You just collect it in a clean bowl, send it off to a lab, collect data, and put pressure on governments, officials, but the main way we're going to push back on this is the same way. The genetically modified food argument, I mean, a while ago that was just considered like a crazy idea that, oh, maybe GMOs aren't entirely safe. Now, a lot of people around the world are at least cautious about them and think twice about it. So I hope before too long the same amount of opposition will be to the spraying program as we've gone with the GMO program. So anyway, I have papers and I'll get those out after. Does anyone have any quick questions?
If they are spraying 10 to 20 million tons of heavy metals here, it must be a very huge industry. So, where is this all this heavy metals discussed?
Okay, the question was, where's it coming from? This is a massive program. It is, they talk about spraying 500 million tons a year of this material, and we should also remember that the nanoparticles are very, very small. I mean, you can get 1 million of them in 1 square millimeter, and you multiply that by 500 million tons, that's a lot of particles. Who's paying for it? I mean, it's an extremely expensive program. To buy one plane, before you even put gas and maintenance and all the stuff in it, you're looking at $200 million per plane. So it's a vast program. Yeah, in the terms of the entire global GDP, it's a small amount, but it's vast.
Is power plant and power plant ashes suspected?
So say that again, sorry.
Coal ash.
Coal ash. I don't know about coal ash. I mean, some people have considered that is used, is sprayed. I mean, coal ash might be used as a raw ingredient, but when you look at the different trails that are being sprayed, they'll behave very differently. I mean, you look at one, stuff will blow off the sides, others will drip, other ones will twist away. So there are different materials being sprayed, and if it was just coal ash, it would all behave the same way. So I think that might be part of it, but I think it's a lot more sophisticated than that. And if you're going to be spending that kind of money to deploy the stuff up there, I'm sure they can spend it. They're not going to scrimp on nanofabrication work before it's actually put up there.
Yes, thank you. Just, you mentioned, you talk about...
Wait for the microphone.
I was just wondering, who is they who's spraying? I'd like to find out who's the enemy. Huh?
So would I. I'd like to know as well.
I mean, they must be very big to know this.
Absolutely. Whoever decided to do this has to be more powerful than national governments, because this program is coordinated all over the world. Regardless, it's in China, Russia, Switzerland, South Africa, Israel, name a place, they're spraying. So it's something above UN, perhaps? I don't know. They don't invite me to their meetings, and I also don't know why they're doing it. I mean, so I don't know who they are. It'd be good to know. Okay?
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, and I really want to say, you know, the question that first came into my mind, why is this not being discussed on our news stations in America? And I think we have to look really closely at the funding, the corporations, and the interests that are behind our national media. And of course, these programs are not in a period of full disclosure yet. And the reason for that is there isn't a climate agreement. Geoengineering programs, while can be done in a regional aspect, as we discussed before, the implications are worldwide. So, for example, again, if you spray in America, you might have some impacts, creating droughts in countries such as Africa, in Asia, and those are actually the words of geoengineers. And if you have droughts in Africa and Asia, that impacts our food security. And our food security not only impacts the prices of food, but it could have astronomical implications in terms of nutritional related mortality rates. So these are big concerns of ours, but we have to really look at the interest in who's bringing forth the information. Now we have many scientists who are on board doing peer-reviewed studies moving forward. But of course, there are some very powerful interests who want these programs to continue. My concern is at the COP21 that an agreement will be reached, and again, that most likely will create the framework to legalize geoengineering without the input of ourselves or our legislators around the world. So it's a very important issue to look at. I would like to announce, speaking of food security, what a very interesting segue we have there. But speaking of food security, I would like to speak or introduce Professor Dukan Dudu, who is going to be addressing different ways of looking at our food security issues and providing food internationally. Is it? Thank you so much for your research and looking forward to your discussion. Thank you.
I'm just wondering if I should be speaking in English or Turkish, actually, depending on the earphones and translation. All right. So is it okay if I speak English? Right, for everybody? Cool. Okay. While my presentation is in Turkish, I was thinking that I will be doing that in Turkish, but no problem at all. Can I have the şey alabilir miyim değiştir? Oh, yeah, thanks. So, first thing, I'm not a professor, thank you anyway, but and second of all, I'm going to be speaking about a complete different topic on climate change, and I will give you actually great news. I will be speaking about a proven solution, and I will be giving you details about how the proofs are, to, in the same time, solve the climate change, stop desertification, and produce food in low cost and high quality. In the same time. So that may look like a kind of a magical solution, yes, I know, but I will tell you about how. So here it says in climate, the win-win solution in climate change, and regenerative agriculture and holistic management, the way to do it. Does it work? Doesn't?
Yeah.
Right? Oh yes, thanks. So first of all, we have the climate change as a problem, right? So there is no discussion about that we as humans are emitting carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, which do cause a global warming all around the world, changing the global and regional and local patterns, rising sea levels, causing droughts, floods, and wars. There are lots of research about how the climate change has been one of the major reasons for the war in Syria right now, the civil war, which started after 5 years of drought in Syria, which was caused by climate change. And I will just show you this very simple and basic graph about climate change and move on how to fix it. So this graph is from United States of America. It's the oldest carbon dioxide calculated measurement station in the world, in Hawaii. And this is the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. As you see, in the 1960s, it has been around 315 ppm, and now it's reached 400 ppm. It is rising. We as humans are producing carbon dioxide and other greenhouses which do warm climate and cause all the problems that we are facing. So yes, there is climate change, and yes, we are causing it. So how to fix it while producing good food? Well, the world nations and governments have been talking about different solutions, and one idea was to solve this through international agreements. As you most probably know, we had Kyoto Agreement after long negotiations, and then we had Copenhagen COP15 process, which has been a very hopeful process, but it failed. And now, right now, at the moment, we are having the COP21 process in Paris, where we are just hoping for an agreement, and we are probably not going to get it. Because to solve climate change is very costly. It costs money. And no government in the world has the power to stop the climate change, because they are all facing economical problems. On the other hand, we are really going downhill. Just think of a heavy loaded truck and the brakes are broken. They're just going downhill. The scientists throughout the world, they do have a huge consensus that for the maximum threshold we have should be 350 ppm. That's the point that we should never ever, surpass. And at the moment we are 400 ppm. So we already crossed the threshold. We are already getting really down the road, in a very bad way, and it is increasing, and there is no idea that it will stop increasing. We should put it down, but it is increasing. So how to solve this problem? Here we come, especially I would like to mention this gentleman, Mr. Alan Savory. He's a Zimbabwean biologist, and he now lives in the United States of America, and he's the founder of Savory Institute, who has many different regional hubs throughout the world, including in Turkey, and we are the Turkish hub. And they are doing great work in United Emirates of Arabia, in China, in States, in Africa. And what we do is that we do make farming, very low-cost farming, especially livestock. And doing livestock, we fight climate change. So think of it. You do farming with very low costs, you decrease costs, and at the same time you fight climate change by putting a lot of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere back to the soil. And you don't use any chemicals, any big machinery, any unimaginable technology. You use livestock. We call this biomimicry. So we just mimic nature in a way that regenerates the soil while producing food. So how does this tackle the climate change? Let's see. Well, we said you can, in the same time, increase the food production, increase the resilience and self-sufficiency in your food production system. You know, all the fertilizers and things like that may be coming from abroad, and you may be paying for them. You get rid of them, you decrease the costs, and you can become, with a soft power, one of the leaders of climate change and nature preservation in the world. And you can do all this by creating economy and value-adding products. In our pilot site in Turkey, what we have done, in the same time, by doing farming, agriculture, we decreased the livestock production cost by 50%. We increased the production of the grassland of the field by around 50% as well. In the same time, we produced the best ever possible livestock products. In our case, meat, but also milk and cheese and other things. And in the same time, we sequestrated 15 tons of carbon dioxide into soil in 1,000 square meters. So in other words, 150 tons per hectare. So in the same time we produce this. There is lots of grass from a deteriorated soil, and there is no fertilizer here, there is no seeding here, there is no machinery here. It's just the way we manage livestock, and that's what the place became in 1 year. And this is the increase of soil of organic matter in our soil. As you see, we have increased 0.6% in 1 year, which means a lot of fertility in the soil, and in the same time sequestrating carbon. So, okay, all these numbers, but what do they mean? They mean that if, let's say, a country like Saudi Arabia, for instance, would do this in their soil, in their old deserts, and achieve these numbers, they would alone stop climate change in the world by transforming their deserts into productive fields that produce food in a few years. And no chemicals, no pollution, just mimicking nature. There is a great knowledge of several decades from all around the world, from Africa to Australia, from United States of America to South America. We are gathering all those years of experience and knowledge and come up with solutions that can make this happen. And is it really working? Is it really happening? Or is it just you, me, speaking about this. Yes, it is happening. There is a great number of people reaching those solutions, those numbers all around the world. For instance, France. The French agriculture minister, Mr. Stéphane Le Foll, just announced a new program 2 months ago. That's very recent. That's very, very new. A new program called 4 pour 1000, which means 4 per 1,000. And he is the French agricultural minister. And he said that we want, as France, to become the leader of this new solution of holistic management and regenerative agriculture and increase the soil organic matter of the world's land only 0.4%. Only 0.4%. Imagine how small it is. And when you do the math, it means that that will alone stop the climate change. And I'm talking about stopping it, not fighting it. I mean, I'm talking about getting cold, getting back to the cold days. This is pure math. I can share the math with anybody who wants. It is proven many, many times. The good thing is that it's very feasible because it does cost very low. It doesn't cost anything really. And in the same time, you produce food. So you fight food crisis, you produce food for people, for your people, and in the same time, you preserve your nature, you regenerate your environment, your land, and from a security point of view or international relations point of view. And that's interesting for me because I have been a graduate for international relations in Galatasaray University in Istanbul. He is one of my teachers back I was in university. And the first time I am gathering those two topics that I'm working together. Because as you know very good, perhaps better than I do, today soft power is very important in international policies. At least important as hard power. And one of the very important things for soft power is economy and the credibility of your nation, of your country, and the leadership that you are playing in different fields. And one of those fields are definitely environment and climate change. Please.
Just a question before you go on.
Sure.
You just said that in the deserts we can grow
Yes.
fields.
Yes.
How do you do that without changing the nature of the land?
That's a very great question. Yes, for the ones who haven't heard that, the question was how can we produce food in deserts without changing a desert, right? That's a very good question, and the answer is that most of the deserts that we have today in the world is man-made deserts, which means they are not natural deserts. Think of the North Africa, the whole North Africa, Saharan desert. That's a desert, right? That desert didn't exist 10,000 or even 5,000 years ago. It wasn't a desert.
But it is a climate change.
No, it has been. No, that's the very interesting thing. The desert became, the Saharan desert, for instance, sorry, became a desert 5,000 years ago where there was no climate change. So the way it became a desert was the way people managed their livestock. Livestock is one of the most powerful tools that humanity ever had. With the livestock, you can create a desert like we are doing in Turkey. In Turkey, the whole Anatolia has been known with very strong grasslands that has been, the place where lots of civilizations has been founded. And they were all, their economy were based on livestock, like the Hittites, the Sumerian also civilizations. But with the livestock, we managed to kill those grasslands. And today, if you go to, for instance, Central Anatolia, to Konya,
But your soil is different. Your soil is Mediterranean, and your geopolitical area is in the middle of between Asia and Europe. All right, so it is very natural for you to do that. But going back to like our country, which is the peninsula, and we have the biggest desert in the world, which is the Rub'a al-Khali. How does this work? I mean, it's very strange.
It is.
You know,
The first time I met this...
Maybe we just have to divert the Nile.
No, the first time I met this solution, that was 5 years ago, I said, no way, it's not possible. I will not believe this. And then I saw the examples, and one example I can give, which is very similar to your case, is one desert, the Baja California desert in Mexico. It's a desert. Nothing grows. Big desert, huge desert. And in the middle of that desert, we have a farmer, a huge rancher, doing holistic management for 20 years. And if you look from Google Earth, his ranch is like an oasis now, green. And it wasn't like that 20 years ago, it was a desert. We had pictures, how it was a desert, and now it is green.
I agree with you totally, but isn't there a shortage of water that we are facing in the world?
Yes, so that's a very good question. There is a very important thing that we have to relearn, which is the grass. When it rains, it doesn't rain grass. It rains water. So the fact that what you do with this little water is going to make the difference between a desert and a healthy grassland. So when we do this kind of methods, we are actually making sure that the little rain that falls into our soil stays there. Will not evaporate back, but stays there and create green grass. So in that example, for instance, they are doing this in an environment where the rainfall is less than 100 millimeters per year, around 8 millimeters.
How can you prevent unpolluted rain to go down on your grass?
Well, I have a long answer for that. If you want, I can give you like in break. Because now we are
just, I mean, in a brief, it's
so
the air is polluted, the rain is polluted.
Yes, so when you have the things polluted, it's gonna take long time to clean them. That's right. But again, to clean them, our best hope is to create healthy soil. So what we do is to create healthy soil by mimicking livestock, by mimicking biology. Actually, we are using biology as a tool to create healthy soil, which do preserve and holds the rainfall. I am very sorry that I didn't bring any videos that would show you very well what happens when it rains if the soil is naked, bare. It rains, and whatever it rains a lot, but all this goes down the valley, creating erosion, and the day after, there is no water. So you just had 50 millimeters of rain in one day, and the next day, they all get evaporated. And in the land that we are managing, you see that there are 50 millimeters of rain. They do not create any erosion, and they do stay in the soil just because the way we manage the land. I will be very happy to answer any further questions if you have. Just a second, I will just come to you. So, yes, let's take your question first.
What happened to the global warming and why it is climate change now? Do you think, is it connected because we are approaching to a cooling age and...
Repeat the question.
I'm asking what happened to the global warming? Why it is climate change now? Is it because we are approaching to a cooling age? And do you wish to talk about, for example, in the Roman age it was warmer than today? Do you think we were burning too much fossil fuels in the Roman age? And would you like to explain how is carbon dioxide is plant food?
Yes.
plant food.
Plant food.
Yes, carbon dioxide is plant food.
I think I can answer that question. Carbon dioxide is essential, and we're going to have to move on. So if there are any more questions, we want to limit this to one, and that was.
Let me just answer this very quick, and then we can finish.
Wonderful.
No, we are not going into a cooling period. We are getting warmer and warmer, and we will get warmer and warmer. The reason why it changed from global warming to climate change is that global warming is. Well, I have looked at all those, and I can guarantee you that if we do not do anything, we are getting warmer and warmer. Believe me, I have seen all of them. I am working climate change for 10 years now, since I am 18.
The government is not using global warming now. They are saying
because climate change is more comprehensive. It's not only that we are getting hotter, we are also getting colder winters. The climate change is a more comprehensive word. And I would like to use my last minute in something else and finish this presentation. If you want to get in touch with us, we can just go visit anadolumeral.com, which is our website. We are a global working movement, and I would just like to finish with this one. I always have been told that ecology and economy are enemies. We have been told like this.
I never said that.
Yeah. Well, we have been told. Yeah, not you. I know. We have been told that if you want to fix ecology, you have to decrease the economy, and if you want to fix economy, you have to abuse nature. But right now, with this holistic management and other regenerative agriculture, we can, at the same time, fix economy and fix ecology at the same time. It sounded very unbelievable to me. It is too good to be true. But at the moment, I am a shepherd. I am a farmer as well, as you may perhaps see from my clothes. I am doing this. I am producing my own food with my own sheep. So I am not only a talker, but also a doer. And I can guarantee on my life that this is working. I can just say that without a doubt. Thank you very much for your attention.
Can you hear me? All right, a very interesting presentation, and I thank you very much for sharing your studies and everything with us. And again, I think it's a question that we need to ask. Food security is very important to all of us, and especially for our nations. And we have to look at, I'm not going to be speaking, so I'm just kind of transitioning. So I think it's very important that we look at the reasons why we're having water shortages, why we're having droughts in certain places, and how can we address this? Is it implementing more technology, or do the solutions lie within nature themselves? And there might be some corporate conflict within a natural setting. However, I think that we can find balance with corporate interest and with the balance of nature. So I just want to put my opinion in there without being too judgmental. So thank you very much for many of your viewpoints. And I would like to introduce Professor Edwin Aldrian, who's going to be speaking about his research as a Director of Center for Research and Development at BMKG Indonesia, who will be directly speaking about not so much, well, I guess a factor of geoengineering, which is regional climate modification, something that's been licensed and has been utilized for several years. So I think it's going to be very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair.
If we could, thank you.
Okay, everyone can hear me? Okay? Yes, okay. I'm Edwin Aldrian. Right now I'm in BMKG, and then I also serve as the IPCC working group as working group 1 vice chair. So thank you very much for the organizer to invite me here. I would like to talk
many some application of weather modification in my country on the food, water, and energy security and disaster prevention. So as we know that my country is very what we call as the laboratory for disaster. So many disaster. Then, for example, the geology disaster and the climate disaster, hydrometeorology disaster. And then from the global statistic, it's mostly in the disaster is hydrometeorology, and then it is the spread of the continent among this that my country is among the worst. And then in our country disaster agency, we know that most of disaster almost 78% due to the weather related. Okay, now I'll move to the weather modification application. So most of the REN enhancements or weather modification is doing by two things. Is introduce sulfur iodide into clouds, and the other one is to sit with the hygroscopic agent. So in Indonesia, as you read the abstract of my talk, that starting in 77 or 78, we copy the one in the Thai bureau that we make landmaking, and then we do some project, and then the project becomes the weather modification center. So most of the cloud seeding, this is the statistic what we done from 85 to 2010. That's mostly on the water plant and irrigation. And then if you compare with the title, that the energy and food security is the most, because we fill up the usually water reservoir or lake or dams with REN enhancement, and then for energy security usually related with the power plant from the water. So this is the whole area of my country, and then some area with for example, I would like to introduce some of applications. The first one is for hydropower. This is the hydropower and irrigation. The other one is for the flood prevention. So you use REN enhancement for the flood prevention, and then the forest fire. So this is the type of airplane that we use. It's very traditional, and then we just cut off the insulation, and then doing the cloud seeding with the air scooper at the bottom there. So this is some kind of a drought situation that we need to fill up the reservoir. And then this cloud seeding in Indonesia is very prospective because we have so many dams and irrigation system and hydroelectric power dams. So for example, this is a hydro power station in the Sulawesi island, and then we're doing with this flare technique, and then for hygroscopic, and this is just example of the road and area, and then this is the catchment area, the yellow one, and then how we fly, and then this is the total area that we serve in the flight tracks. This is a flight track example for that one. So this is a cascading dam, so you can see that the dam is for power plant, and then this operation also supported by the weather radar. Usually this is an X-band weather radar, and then C-band weather radar, and then we can direct pilot, which is blindly operating the flight, and then controlled by the radar operator. So these are the flare, and this flare already we already made this nationally, so we will not import this anymore. So this is the flare that we try and burning at the down and at the surface. So this is the hygroscopic flare that we produce, and then this is it's actually comparable to the one made from the United States. With some sulfur, charcoal, and so on like that. So this is the testing flight for the flare, and then we already look at this in 3 dams. So this is the upper catchment, this is middle, and the lower catchment area. So now we equip with this Piper Giant aircraft, and then you can see that this is some of application of the weather modification for the filling up the reservoir. Another reservoir that very important for my country is to supplying water to the capital is this reservoir, and also supplying the electricity from the cascading dams here. So this is very strategic because not only for generating power plant, but also irrigation and to the city water supply. So this is an example of that. We try to fill up this catchment area using some of the cloud seeding in this location in the West Java area. Okay, so there is an increase that this evaluation is done by the third party that control make some monitoring and evaluation of the success of our activity. So it is quite successful. Usually, the more successful one is when we fill up the reservoir after the rainy season. So when it is happening or occurring after the dry season, the rate of success is not as far as that one. This is the isoyet. This is what we call in the meteorology isoyet, how much the rainfall. Look at this number. This number is a very large number, above 100 millimeter. That is a quite high number for the rate of success. And then most of them is like in the inner of catchment area. The next one is I would like to introduce the use of weather modification for rainfall reduction. So there are some attempts for this one, and then you can see that this is the method for the competition mechanism for the weather modification for that. And then if you introduce too many aerosol and then which have small size, then you can produce that is competing agent for the cloud development. So you just introduce a giant hygroscopic agent to make the collision efficiency just very short time, short period. Or in that case, if you doing the seeding outside the your interested area, you can hinder your area which is not receiving very much rainfall. So another one is by jumping process mechanism. So this is the capital, our capital and the catchment area to flow water to this capital area. This is our target area. We would like to have rainfall less than the surrounding area. This is usually what we done in the peak of the rainy season. So we try to create this area as a competition area for the seeding agent, and then we introduce the flare from the ground flare in the upper catchment area. So this is like creating a mist of the aerosol that will have saturated aerosol, and then will create some sort of less rainfall condition.
Excuse me,
Yes.
What's the aerosol you're using for the ground flares to prevent the rain?
Yes, what are these agents?
Yes, this is this similar like similar salt, sodium chloride, but very thick one. Yeah, very thick one, because so to create a saturated. And then on the other side, we create the jumping process. That means we try to make rainfall before entering the target area. So this jumping process will have, if you see some clouds moving in this area, into this target area, you try to stop them and then make them precipitate. Precipitate shortly after that you cloud seeding. So in that area, you can have overseed to make a competition in that area. So this is the kind of instrument that we use. This is the ground-based generator for the aerosol. And then actually we have a reduction. This is calculation by the third agent or third party. We have a reduction of 1/3 of that the regular. So the summary, we have implemented this actually. For the last 3 years right now, we implemented this kind of technique, and during the mid of heavy rainfall. So this is news from the Wall Street Journal talking about this attempt for us, Indonesia, to twist on rainmaking or something like that. The last one is forest fire smoke haze. This is a big problem for us, especially this year when the El Nino, severe El Nino hit the maritime continent. You can have this, it is September, October last year, but same problem. The problem with forest fire that usually when the big El Nino hit us, usually it will follow with a large number of hotspots. This is highly correlated, very high correlation. So this is a big problem for us. So we have a very worst area. This is 25 October, two months ago. Very thick smoke haze in this area, South Sumatra area. And then we're doing cloud seeding. This is the aircraft take off from Jakarta and then going like this in the South Sumatra. And then this one also doing cloud seeding in the West Kalimantan. And this one is Central Kalimantan and so on like that. We produce like a very high volume of water, but this is not enough. I think this is, but the situation we can make the smoke haze thinner than it used to be. Another thing, we also produce ground mist generator. This is in two airports. In the airport, we make the ground mist generator to produce low concentration of aerosol to reduce the smoke haze, because the smoke haze in this area is peat-like smoke haze has some contains some water, so that this. But if the smoke haze is too thick, this doesn't flow. So this is a big problem. But if this is not so thick that this mist generator can work. I think in high latitude area they use this to clear the haze in the airport as well.
Oh, question.
Yes.
Those tunnels in the last slide, is that for the entire project? Is that?
No, this is we put in these two airports, in the two provincial airports.
I was just wondering the time scale for you for that 1,600 kilograms. Is that over 1 year?
No. The period for
per trip.
No. This is stay there for 2 months.
2 months.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One of the flare is 1 kilo. This is almost 400 kilo. And we use this Russian plane barrier to 2,000 as water bomber and sub helicopter. Okay, I think I wrap up this.
Thank you very much. Yes, yes.
You may read this. I think this is some experiment of our application for the cloud seeding. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. And much to my neglect in terms of my lack of consciousness for the time, we're going to wrap 2 others up, but we want to leave them to 12 minutes each if we could in the presentations. It's lunchtime, and again, my sincere apologies for not keeping a tab on the time. We want to be respectful, and certainly all of the presentations I think are very valuable, incredible information. So thank you for sharing the weather modification projects and your expertise with our crowd. I would like to introduce Michael Fleming. He is an author of a recent book that has come out, which addresses geoengineering, climate modification, and certain risks that go along with these damaging programs. So Michael, thank you very much. If you could either sit down or stand up, whichever you would prefer.
Yeah, I don't have a visual presentation. I'm just going to do the speech.
Thank you.
Are you able to hear me on the microphone okay? No, you can't. All right. So yeah, I wanted to start off with a poem that was written in 1891. This is on the back of my book, Weather and Active Man. The poem is The Rime of the Rain Machine by F.W. Clark. Said Jeremy Jonathan Jones, the weather is far too dry, so I reckon I'll have to stir my bones and try the effect of concussive tones upon the lazy sky. So Jeremy Jonathan Jones went away to the nearest town, and there his money was quickly spent for queer contraptions all intent to make the rain come down. There were cannon and mortars and lots of shells, and dynamite by the ton, with a gas balloon and a chime of bells and various other mystic spells to overcloud the sun. The day was fair and the sky was bright and never a cloud was seen. When Jeremy Jonathan set alight his biggest fuse and screwed up tight the joints of the rain machine. He fired a shot and barely two when the sky began to pale. The third brought a heavy dew, but at the fourth, tornadoes blew with thunder, rain, and hail. It rained all night and another day, and then for a week or more. It flooded the farm in a scandalous way and drowned poor Jeremy, sad to say, who couldn't stop the ford. Jeremy Jonathan Jones, your farm was spared to see, but now a lake lies over its stones, from whose dark bosom horrific moans are heard nocturnally. To check the flood you've started, I've heard all the efforts were in vain, until the Bureau at Washington stirred and stopped the storm with a single word, just by predicting rain. In 1891 is when Texas weather modification, the largest weather modification program in the United States, began their official cloud seeding program with multiple areas producing clouds by rockets. They were producing clouds, like he said, the same way from the ground mist generators, and they have caused tons of storms, hurricanes, I'm sorry, not hurricanes, tornadoes through the states of Kansas, Oklahoma, killed hundreds of people. On a yearly basis, they call it tornado season, quote unquote, and the reality of it is that this weather is manufactured in America. But the speech, I wrote this little speech just to talk mostly about geoengineering, and I'll go ahead and start that. Weather is an act of man, not an act of God, not a peril of Mother Nature, but an act of man. We created this society, and now we must prevent it from being destroyed. Weather is the #1 killer of people worldwide, with 60,000 people dying daily. After thousands of geoengineering complaints over the last few years, if not hundreds of thousands, I am grateful that organizations who have taken steps to protect local citizens through the Clean Air Act and other regulations that prevent innocent lives from succumbing to disease and death from our most important life-supporting substance, which is air. Clouds contain water, but consist mostly of pollution. All clouds are man-made. One life taken is too many. When 40% of the population is dying from air pollution, we have an obvious genocide problem on our hands. The IPCC estimates over 2 billion people to die by 2025 from solar radiation emission scenarios, which is referred to as geoengineering, of course. I'm not here today to complain about exhaust from passenger jets. I'm not here to complain about what some call condensation trails and a weak attempt to trick the gullible into accepting the obvious emission of pollution. I'm here to talk about geoengineering, the euphemism or cover story for what is known as using chemical weapons against citizens. As this was done during Operation LAC, Operation DEW, Project 112, and Operation Ranch End. In Operation LAC, the intelligence community funded the use of chemical weapons against American citizens in order to turn humans into a laboratory test. In violation of the Nuremberg Treaty, the Central Intelligence Agency instructed the Army's chemical laboratory to use aerosolized chemical agents against American citizens to, quote, see how far they would spread. With a result of 1,200 miles and a single release of the supposed harmless bacteria, Bacillus globuli, over the San Francisco Bay, deaths and illnesses resulted in the very first test. Yet the CIA kept funding the research into creating an artificial sulfate atmosphere with cadmium sulfide, which is a battery acid, and is similar to the same substance now used, which is sulfuric acid. Innocent Americans were subjected to these tests, and many people died. Just as Napoleon used sulfur dioxide to murder the Haitians, just as sulfur dioxide is a chemical terror agent according to the Department of Homeland Security, just as the Environmental Modification Convention banned the use of weather modification activities in 1980 with the United States, just as an international ban was signed against geoengineering in 2010, just as chemical terrorism and biological testing laws prevent such activities, why do we allow our children to be intentionally sprayed with aluminum oxide, sulfuric acid, sulfur dioxide, and other biological and chemical agents for, quote, climate change? How can we allow this repeat of history to continue? From what I remember, the climate was doing just fine before these individuals started tampering with it. As a matter of fact, the 1990s were flourishing with hope for my country of America. Our technology level was increasing faster than anyone else in the world. Our spirits were higher than ever before. And now we are nothing more than a third world country, second to China, subjected to the use of chemical terror agents by the terrorist regime of Barack Hussein Obama and over 50 additional nations which all participate in geoengineering schemes. My mother always told me that serial killers were arrested and that bad guys went to jail. My professor in the Law Enforcement Academy teaches me that the only thing required to convict a criminal in a court of law is 2 credible witnesses or an admission from the guilty party. We have both in addition to official documentation as well as admissions of guilt from the perpetrators. And I'm left to ask myself, what is the problem? Has extradition become extinct? Did the war on terror go the wrong way? Do we now allow terrorists to roam free? And have we declared a war on the innocent people? From what I see, we have done nothing less. We have admissions from David Keith, admitted serial killer and poster child of the geoengineering program, that he is releasing chemical agents on the population. We have thousands of people complaining about it to federal law enforcement and regulatory agencies, begging for it to stop. We have nothing but lies and deceit from these individuals, and much more, nothing more than a carbon credit scheme in place. Corporations are cashing in on the insurance policies of billions of lives while taxing the very air that we breathe. David Keith is not only an advocate and admitted performer of this chemical terrorism program, he is also the owner of a company called Carbon Engineering in Calgary, Canada. Just as BP pleaded guilty to 13 counts of manslaughter and obstruction of justice and yet received nothing more than a fine, David Keith receives nothing more than a few phone calls for slaughtering 40% of the population in the largest terror attack and Ponzi scheme in history. We have had 5 mass extinctions before from sulfur dioxide, and we are now in the 6th mass extinction already in progress. We must not let this virus from the United States must not allow this virus from the United States to plague the rest of the world with our climate control schemes. This is a simple problem with a simple solution. If criminals are allowed to roam free, crimes will be committed. I ask for the system that has been put in place to begin to function once again. The first intentional cloud seeding began in the 1800s, while the first aircraft cloud seeding was performed in 1923. Again, this repeat of history must not be allowed to continue. The problem of climate change can be solved by eliminating geoengineering and cloud seeding schemes. The solution to overpopulation can be solved by focusing on renewable energy. We have only one life and one world. Our duty is to preserve and maintain both for our and our children's future. All this information can be located at www.stopchemicalterrorism.com. And I also have official documents on the website for the gentleman who asked. He's not in here right now, but he asked who was doing this. And the admissions that I've received are NASA, DARPA, NOAA, and the Central Intelligence Agency. And the 2 bases that I've had, actually it was 3. There's NASA Wallops, NASA Armstrong, and Pino Air Park for the Central Intelligence Agency, which is in Raleigh, Arizona. Those are the 3 aircraft facilities that have actual aircraft there that perform this against the United States and the rest of the world.
Thank you very much, Michael, for bringing your expertise and your knowledge to the table. Obviously,